questions for some members of Halifax Regional Council, namely for District 5, Councillor Sam Austin, and for District 2, Councillor David Hensby. On a few questions for Hensby that had resurfaced, and a Facebook posting in regards of District 5, Sam Austin's writing in regards of a tour of the Pallett shelters community in North Woodside. Now, I'm going to ask a few questions here because I asked Councillor Sam Austin in regards about these homeless encampments, shelters, whatever you call them. Because I looked at these shelters, they look quite interesting, you know. They're quite well maintained because I looked at the pictures. To tell you the truth, when I seen these pictures, gee, it made me wondering if I should apply for them myself, because there they are. I believe it has a heat pump installed with a chair, a table, and a cot, a bed, garbage can inside. It's well maintained. And I was going to ask questions: is there power that's hooked up to these facilities? And the main question what I asked Sam Austin is, I wrote down things I asked Sam Austin. Here, when I asked Councillor Sam Austin on Facebook in regards of the tour Pallett Shelter Community in North Woodside, I asked Councillor Sam Austin on Facebook saying, hey, this is not much, but it's better than nothing. But the question is what I asked. This is the question what I asked. But what's in place if a person is caught vandalizing these shelters besides the taxpayers being on the hook? Is there any other solutions that we can have to pay for these shelters, Pallett shelters, whatever you want to call them, without the taxpayer being on the hook or being at risk? Pretty simple question. In response on Facebook from Councillor Sam Austin, Councillor for District 5, had replied back saying, it's a provincial project and a non-profit is running it. And he also said HRM will provide support, as we have been at multiple sites. These days, as there are some things that HRM is just better at. There are some homes, but they're a major step from a tent giving residents from autonomy and privacy, which I understand. There are separate bathrooms and meals support on sites. All right. But see, he's not answering the question what we had asked. The ultimate question is, what's in place if a person is caught vandalizing these shelters, besides the taxpayer being on the hook to pay for them? Now, Sam Austin went on to say that who's paying for this? I didn't write that down. I will look here on. See, I have it here on my computer, so I'll have to look it down. I thought I wrote it down. Obviously, I haven't. Sam Austin really just said that it's a provincial project and it's a non-profit organization that's helping out. If it's a provincial level that's going to pay for this, if it's a federal organization that's going to provide for this, fund this, if it's a municipal level of government that's going to afford this, going to fund this, one way or the other, the taxpayer is paying for this. So the question when I asked Sam Austin, which he did not answer directly, there was no direct response, was who is on the hook, who is going to pay to refix these shelters if a person is caught vandalizing it. Because we all know that the police come out if somebody's caught, they charge them, they'll arrest them, give them a PPA, property protection order, to stay off the premises from this location. But there's no direct response into this question, which I find is quite interesting, because the question what I had asked is the question that everybody's asking themselves at home. Who pays for the upkeep, the fixation of the vandalism that people may do or could do if someone was to vandalize these shelters? Why is Halifax Regional Council not putting something in place where they can have something like here, a non-profit organization, but it's not saying who's going to pay for it? Why don't, my solution is Halifax Regional Council and the province turn to the community? Can we find donations from corporate sponsors who can help pay to fund these shelters? Halifax Transit, for instance, has paid advertisements that pays for their bus shelters that if it gets smashed or vandalized. Can we do something similar to this for these homeless encampment shelters here in North Woodside and wherever in HRM may have these shelters being placed? And one person from the community had told me, I should say, if HRM was to expand these shelters throughout their HRM region, let's say it goes into a rural community, what's the HRM's plan of solution to orchestrate their washrooms out in a rural community? To shower, because you got to shower, you have to go to the washroom. It's physically, mentally impossible to not go to the washroom in an entire day. Everybody has to go to a washroom within a day. So let's talk logic here. Let's not talk left field. Let's talk logic here. So it's not possible for a person to go without going to the washroom. They have to use the washroom. They have to have access to a washroom. So the question is, are these people in other encampment shelters going to have access to washrooms besides the community of North Woodside? That's the question. But the question that I asked Sam Austin was not answered directly. And I'm asking Councillor Sam Austin if you could answer that question better and more directly. Who is going to pay for these shelters if somebody vandalizes these shelters? Who's paying for it besides the taxpayer? Because if it's HRM going to pay for it, if it's the province that's going to pay for it, it's the federal government's going to pay for it, one way or the other, the taxpayer's paying for it. Let's just not say, oh, we're going to whatever here. The bottom line is the taxpayer's on the hook. So my solution is, can we come up with a way so the taxpayer is not on the hook? Or not on the hook is bad. Not as much, I should say. That's my solution. And can Halifax Regional Council not look at that solution? Now, because here's the other option I wanted to ask, which I don't know if it was brought up. The subsidized housing program is based on a person's income. Now, some of those people that are accessing them encampment shelters are actually working full-time jobs, and no matter their income, they still can't afford access to an apartment because the affordability of an apartment is just excruciating, out of the touch of reality. Very unrealistic. And the concern is what I had is, instead of giving these shelters to these people for free, because the HRM, the province, the federal government can clearly tell if any of these people are working or not. And my suggestion is, why don't we put a rental fee on people who are working part-time and full-time jobs, so it's not as bad as a blow for the taxpayer, so they're not on the hook. If a person is working, perhaps depending on their income, perhaps there should be a rental charge of $220 a month, depending on their income, or $120 a month. It's not the way how it would protect the taxpayer fully, but it's a better solution, so some of the money that's being put out by the taxpayer is being returned back to the taxpayer from the people who are actually working, who are accessing these shelters, who need them. And I believe if you put a charge of like $220 a month or $120 a month for people, the taxpayers is not on the hook as bad, and they're not taking the blow as severely as it is, because when you look at today's economy, the inflation rates, people are in crisis, and they're struggling to put food on the table, they're struggling to pay their bills, they're struggling to hold on to their jobs. Majority of the jobs that they're doing is overworked. Some of them jobs are unsafe that they're doing. You know, no job security, no nothing. We need to come up with a solution that the taxpayer is not on the hook as bad, and the taxpayer will get their money back. Because I believe if the city, the province, or the federal government is going to put money out for the taxpayer to pay for these shelters, I believe the taxpayer should be entitled to have their money reimbursed from these people who are working, so they can get their money back. I can understand if there's somebody out there that's not working at all because they're on income assistance. All right, that there can be an exception. All right, we'll waive their the rental fee. We'll give it to them for free, or $20 a month, whatever that may be. But the reality is, what Halifax Regional Council, the province of Nova Scotia, and the federal government of Canada has to realize, which they're not tuning into, is the services that's out to help people is not actually meeting their needs. It never had been, and it never was. And the question is, how can we change that? How can we turn that sense of direction around to these organizations that's supposed to be helping people when really they're only making people's situations worse? For example, I'll say, let's talk about the Department of Community Services. The Department of Community Services is supposed to be there to help people better their lives, because they can't afford rent, because they got no job, they got no safe, good, reliable employment. They got nothing. They got kids to support. They got nothing to back them up. What the government has to realize is that if the Department of Community Service, or the province, I should say, and the city has to turn to realize is the province is not able to meet the needs of the people. Something has to be done. We have to have a solution for this to work, and it's not working. And what can we do to fix this problem? I know one thing down in the States, I have a relative that lives down in the United States, community services, welfare, whatever you want to call it down there, is called social assistance. What is that? Now, I was told down there, or Social Security, I should say, welfare, community service down in the States is called Social Security, and I was told down there, Social Security is into effect for a time limit of 2 years. Then they're kicked off. Their time expired, and you either find a job or whatever, or you got to go back to the doctor to prove that you have a disability, or you're not getting your claim worked on again. Why ain't the province of Nova Scotia not looking at that? How many people are on the system, or on it, when they don't need to be on it? Now, the problem is with the province, when they go after people who are on it when they shouldn't be on it, they go after everybody. They'll go after the people who has physical disabilities, they can't walk, people with serious mental health issues where their mental health risk level is too high to go to work, and they're posing the rest of people. The province of Nova Scotia goes after everybody, and they put people who need the service at risk. They've been doing this for years, and this is what we have to look after. What I'm wanting to know is how many people are in these shelters, or in it, because they're addicted to drugs, they're addicted to alcoholism. They don't want to help themselves. They're posing a risk to the general public. How many of those people is there in those shelters? Because here's the thing. If we're going to be giving these shelters to people, it should be for people who are going to work, can't afford rent because the rent's just unrealistically too high, too unaffordable, or unrealistically being affordable. Why don't we give those people these Pallett shelters instead of just anybody that comes in off the street? Because for starters, it cuts back on the risk level of vandalized, being destroyed, you know, because there was a few stores I heard with the North in Dartmouth. You hear, I heard a few years back there was an apartment that was set afire. It caused people to be, had to leave their apartments, had to find, they were displaced, they had to live somewhere else for the time being because, according to what I heard, the feedback from the people was that this woman was an alcoholic. She was smoking. She got so intoxicated, she passed out, fell asleep, and her cigarette went on the carpet on the floor, and it caught the place afire. And she was too coherent or intoxicated to get up and realize what was taking place. And because of that, people lost their homes. They were displaced for a number of months. For that fact, even a couple of years. Why can't the province and the city engage these people who are posing a risk to others and to these affordable housing units like these shelters, not give them access to those shelters? Only the people who are actually, you know what I mean, help themselves, you know what I mean? Because the way I see it, this problem can be, it's like, I don't know, it's like walking on a lake that's froze over with ice. The problems you can cross the lake much easier if the load's not so heavy. But if it's too heavy, you're going to punch through. And that's what's wrong with this problem. The problem is we got people in the system who's on the system who shouldn't be in the system. And the province is doing absolutely nothing but coming up with excuses on why they're not engaging this issue. My concern here, the city of Halifax Regional Council is not the issue. The issue is the province of Nova Scotia and their Minister of Community Service. They're doing absolutely nothing at all, next to nothing, to really combat this issue. There's a fair statement. I mean, when Tim Houston went in, he sounded a lot like Justin Trudeau. He's going to solve everybody's problems overnight. When in fact, the issues are getting worse. People are getting more and more. The numbers of people who go to family doctor are getting worse. The situation in Nova Scotia is getting worse. There's no good, reliable employment in Nova Scotia. The majority of the employment that Nova Scotia has is temp agencies, employment with employers that are unreliable, that provide dangerous work sites, or people being overworked, unappreciated, very disrespected. That's what Nova Scotia has for employment. And then the government of Nova Scotia is wondering why people are not staking in Nova Scotia. And then you got the immigration crisis. People are having resentment that these people are coming in their province and taking jobs away from its own Nova Scotia people. So that's my concern with the Pallett shelters in North Woodside. I mean, if Sam Austin could respond to this question when I asked who is going to be on the hook if vandals vandalize these encampment shelters, Pallett shelters, whatever they're called, because it's not rocket science. There has to be an answer here, Summers, because that question I asked is not being answered. Councillor Austin of District 5 did not answer my question directly, and I'd like to have it answered directly. I'd like to have Halifax Regional Council bring this up. Join Halifax Regional Council. Can we have a corporate sponsor or sponsors donations from big corporations that can help pay and provide for these encampment shelters if more is needed, and when somebody decides to come by and vandalize these encampment shelters? And there's also a question asked by a woman out in the community who asked Councillor Sam Austin. Her name is Pallett. I'm not going to answer her last name. And she had asked, do the washrooms include showers, and is there security on site? Now that's another question, security on site. We talked about the washrooms, but the question is, where Sam Austin has stated that there is security and staff on site, but the question is, again, who's paying for the security and who's paying for the staff? The taxpayer? You see where I'm coming from? The taxpayer? The taxpayer seems to be what the government's laying back on. This is a problem. This is why I'm saying we need to have corporate sponsors who can pay for these shelters, pay for the security, pay for the staff on site. And then my other question is the Red Cross on site in these locations providing food, clothing? Is there any mental health support on this site? Because majority, not all the people, but there are some people who engage these encampment shelters are mentally ill or with mental health issues. So my next question is to Sam Austin is, who's paying for the security on these sites and who's paying for the staff on site? Now, respectfully asking Sam Austin if you could bring an answer to that. And I'm asking the clerk's office at Halifax Regional Council if they can bring this forward to Regional Council also. And I'm also asking my councillor, David Hinsby, if he can provide a better answer than what Sam Austin had provided. How much time do we got here? Oh. Alrighty. Now our next question is directed at Councillor David Hinsby for District 2. A few months back, I asked Councillor Hinsby, which he had responded to, about the Halifax Transit buses routes that serves the community of Preston, Lake Echo, and Porters Lake, and the other rapid service, bus number 370, that runs directly from downtown Halifax to Porters Lake. I'm going to start getting on the bus route number 370, then I'll go to the 401, that is the other bus that serves the community of Porters Lake, Lake Echo, and East Preston. In 2012, there was a Halifax Transit Park and Ride constructed in the community of Porters Lake on Inspiration Way, just off the side of the Porters Lake Elementary School. In 2012, it was announced that the communities of Minesville, Musquodoboit and Harbour were also going to have access to this rapid transit 370 bus route that will run from Porters Lake to downtown Halifax. The concern is Minesville and Musquodoboit Harbour never got that park and ride constructed when it was supposed to. Here we are in 2024, and those two park and rides are still not constructed. And there have been a few community members within the community of Musquodoboit Harbour and in Minesville that have been wanting to know why they have not had their Halifax Transit Park and Ride constructed in their community of Musquodoboit Harbour and in Minesville. I had reached out to Halifax Transit manager, Mr. Dave Boudreau. He was good enough to respond back, and his response was the planning for the community of Musquodoboit Harbour had been abandoned, discontinued, not going to happen. First, he knows as of right now on his plate that project had been discontinued, not going to happen at the time for this time being. First, he knows. And the park and ride for the community of Minesville was paused. He doesn't know what's going to transpire right now, but he had stated that it is on the agenda, but he cannot give a specific date when that's going to happen, but he had agreed that it was postponed. I had asked Councillor David Hinsby about it, and the response I heard back was that he was saying that Dave Boudreau's information was not absolutely correct, saying that David Hinsby has stated that Dave Boudreau was going by an old report. I gotta say, if you're a manager of Halifax Transit, I don't know if I would agree with Hinsby on that. But Hinsby had stated that he had been advocating for the park and ride to be constructed in the community of Minesville. That's his side of the story. And he had stated that the community of Muscatava Harbour has not been discontinued. Now, this is what Hinsby's saying, had not been discontinued. I'm going with what Dave Boudreau told me on the phone, the manager of Halifax Transit. So, if you're going to ask me what direction either David Hinsby or Dave Boudreau would I listen to on information, I would go with Dave Boudreau because he's actually the Halifax Transit manager and he would know what's what. And David Hinsby had also stated that, like what I said, if a park and ride was constructed in the community of Minesville, that the ridership would go up immediately. David Hinsby had agreed on what I had stated, but he had also stated that it had been proven on a report, a study. If the community of Minesville was to have their park and ride constructed for the Rapid Transit 370 that runs from Porters Lake to Halifax, that the ridership will increase significantly. As of right now, the passenger requirement for a Halifax Transit bus is 14 passengers per trip. The Halifax Transit bus route number 370, that's a rapid bus service that runs from Porters Lake to downtown Halifax, is only getting 6-7 passengers per trip, which means it's at risk of being discontinued. And it had been voiced in the community of Porters Lake that they want their Halifax Transit, they want to have a public transit in their community. Now, so there you go. So now the next one is the 401 that runs from the community of East Preston, Lake Echo, and Porters Lake. It had been stated that they were going to try to make this bus service better than what it is. But here's the problem. The community of Porters Lake, the residents have been stating that they want that bus. And that bus is doing a lot better than the 370. And like I said, the required passengers per trip is 14 passengers per trip. And people had asked, why are they not having better service? Now, here's the answer. It's because of low ridership. If you're running a transit bus, you're not going to send a great bus service to a community that you're not getting enough passengers on. There's your answer. The 401 passenger rate right now, what that bus is getting, because I did a head count myself, is roughly 12 to 10 people per trip. It has to be 14 passengers per trip. Sometimes the 401 had 20 people on board, a few trips. But here's the thing. For the 401 Halifax Transit bus service to be reliable, to sustain a good service to a community, that 14 passengers per trip has to be every day, every trip that it goes on. 14 passengers per one trip and only have like 8, 12 people on the other trips, it's not good enough. And a guy from Muscatava Harbour, Mr. Cameron, I'm not going to mention his first name, has stated in his community where he lives in Muscatava Harbour, he wanted the 370 to go to Muscatava Harbour so he can go to doing his thing. And I had stated that's because of the Muscatava Harbour park and ride had been discontinued. And David Hinsby and Dave Boudreau's facts are going back and forth. Whose side do you believe in? I do believe it's either you give them a bus service or you give them a straight out answer. What happened? Why can't they get it? David Hinsby got to come up and be more realistic, more upfront with his people, saying that plan was abandoned. Put it out there so they know. But this individual who asked that question, he was actually talking to me, is a retired staff at Eastern Shore District High. I'm not going to give out his first name, so he's confidential security of who he is, identity of who he is covered for his own security. But I have responded flat out to him on social media saying, here's your problem with the 401 and the 370. When you look at the community of Porters Lake, what do you see? And Eastern Shore, what do you see wrong with the communities of Porters Lake and the Eastern Shore? Two things. It's a rich community and it's a middle class community. Both. If you're poor, if you're low income, you stand out like a sore thumb. You really do. The communities of Porter's Lake and the Eastern Shore is constructed for the rich and the middle class only. If you're low income, you're poor, they don't care. They'll run right over you if necessary. Their concern is, well, see, they're too proud to gain access to the bus because their friend or friends might see them gain access to the bus, even though that they don't take the bus because they're too proud to take the bus because they might be seen. That's why things are the way they are. And if it's been done before on social media, somebody would bring this up on and want either the Porter's Lake Community News Group, which I operate, which I'm the administrator, me and David Hensley, which is very secure, free from online harassment, free from fake profilers who like to attack people, so their identity's covered, which can be identified if the police had to get involved to charge somebody. You can easily go to the provider and that fake Facebook profiler is quickly identified. People have been attacking individuals on social media about their concern on how they like to have their community looked, shaped. And I think that needs to be addressed. You got your Porter's Lake community issues, you got your other stuff, you know. But people had voiced they wanted a public transit in their community of Porter's Lake, and they haven't been getting satisfied service because, like I said, low ridership. And I said, people got to swallow the pride to get on these buses. If they're going to be sitting there too worried about what people think because they're on it, because they're too ashamed or too proud to take it, that's why you get garbage service for public transit service on the Eastern Shore. But I've been arguing in the past with the province, saying that should Porter's Lake still be considered the Eastern Shore? Because when you go to the community of Porter's Lake, what do you see? You see a town. You see a small town. You see the feeling is like a city lake. That's the feeling when you go to Porter's Lake. But, you know, it is what it is. But I'm asking Councillor Hensby if he could be more upfront with this Porter's Lake public transit in their communities, the 370 and the bus route number 401. But anyways, if you can get a hold of David Hensby, could get a hold of Mr. Cameron, call him, talk to him on the phone. I mean, if David wants his first name, I'll tell him on the phone. I'm going to tell him here because it's personal stuff. So I'm going to ask that he can reach out to Mr. Cameron and, you know, get his feedback so his voice is heard. Because people on the Eastern Shore would like to overvoice people who like to have things. That's been going on from day one. They do it on social media quite a bit. I've seen it happen. I've seen the police go to people's doors because they were overvoicing people to the point that they were harassing them, humiliating them on social media, on these social media Facebook groups and pages. And I had mentioned it to Halifax Regional Council, the clerk's office, about having a group page or a social media page or whatever. So people are free from online harassment because they voiced their voice on whatever their community issues can be. So they're free of, you know, backlash. And because, you know, when they do that, you know, here's the thing with social media. Those people who run those group pages, if you're allowing somebody to harass somebody, humiliate them, if they do it to the point that somebody, let's say, committed suicide or hurt themselves or others, that administrator of that group who did not delete that attack posting, who did not remove that individual, the administration of that group can be charged. That's what they have to be aware of, and they're not. But I'm just saying, you know, social media is not a very good place to be doing anything on. Social media is just, from what I can tell, from my experience with it, it's a place where people like to argue, fight, wrestle with people, you know, whatever. I got no time for that. But anyways, we did this here council session for Halifax Regional Council and David Hensby and Councillor Sam Austin in regards about the District 5 Pallett community in North Woodside. If Sam Austin could give me a more direct answer on who's paying for these shelters if they were to be vandalized, and who's paying for the security and for the staff on these sites besides the taxpayer. And I asked Sam Austin if he could look at having a regional council look at having other sponsors to pay for this besides the taxpayers. Like corporate sponsors like Loblaws, Sobeys, because we already know the answer with Loblaws and Sobeys. If you're asking them to pay out, they're not going to do anything because their main focus is making their millions of dollars. And Loblaws and Sobeys have been in the spotlight on negativity by the federal government many a times. And their main CEOs have resigned from office, from their positions many a times. But anyways, my name's Adam Conrod. If Sam Austin and Councillor David Henry could get back to us, me, that'd be great. But anyways, we'll see you later on.